The movie opens with teenage girl Ruby enjoying a horror movie at the theater with her friends. Although not very scared, at least they got a good laugh when the film ended. One of the girls wonders where they should go next. But Ruby says she'll go home, she doesn't want to argue with her parents anymore. They believe she's still asleep. The next morning, Ruby has breakfast with her parents and her younger brother before going to school. At school, she meets her friends, and they plan another outing. That evening, Ruby's parents go to a restaurant to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary. They have no idea that Ruby secretly went out to smoke, drive over the speed limit, and attend a party with friends. They also laugh at how much her parents trust her. When Ruby gets home, she sprays perfume to cover the smell of smoke but suddenly notices a police car waiting outside. She assumes her parents called the police thinking she was kidnapped. Ruby goes inside and tells the officers she's not missing. However, they aren't there for her, they are there because her parents had a fatal car accident. The shocking news causes Ruby to faint. A few days later, a funeral is held during a memorial service. Red wants to say a few words but is too grief-stricken to speak. The funeral is attended by Irene and Terry, close family friends. At Ruby's house, a funeral is taking place. It's very crowded, so Ruby stays in the kitchen for some privacy but is soon noticed. The family lawyer, Alvin, informs her that she and Red will be adopted by the Terry family and that her parents left them enough money so they won't have to worry. Alvin hands Ruby his card and leaves the room as Mr. and Mrs. Terry enter to hug and comfort her. A few days later, Red and Ruby leave their home to move to Malibu with Irene and Terry. Upon arrival, they are surprised to see a large, mostly glass house. Eli gives them a tour, introduces them to the housekeeper, and shows them to their rooms, where the siblings will now share a space. Neither Ruby nor Red is happy about this. That evening, Irene serves several homemade dishes, but the siblings show little interest. So Irene ends up ordering pizza. At bedtime, Red is still awake and joking around. So Ruby goes out to the hallway to change clothes. She senses someone watching her. Ruby hears a noise and sees a shadow leaving. The next day, it's time for school. Their new school is public instead of private. After classes, when the siblings return to their room, they are surprised by gifts. Red receives a series of video game consoles, and Ruby gets lots of clothes. That night, while in bed, Ruby suddenly sees her mother appear. But it turns out to be just a dream. Unable to sleep, she changes into a swimsuit and goes swimming in the private pool. Everything seems normal until someone appears. Startling her, it's Terry. Awakened by the noise, he explains he thought there was an intruder. Terry helps Ruby out of the pool and gives her a towel. But he looks at her in a very strange way. He also forbids night swimming from now on since the glass walls don't provide soundproofing. Another day at school, Ruby watches a video of drunk driving, which reminds her of her parents' accident, making her very sad. She becomes upset at dinner when Irene asks about her driving class. So she excuses herself and goes to the bathroom to find some headache medicine. Irene finds Ruby there and tries to comfort her. But Ruby lies, saying she feels unwell due to her period. Irene immediately takes her to a private bathroom, where Ruby discovers a large stockpile of pharmaceuticals. Ruby is given a pill, but it's not just a painkiller. When she goes to sleep, she relaxes deeply and falls into a deep sleep, not even noticing Red playing video games. A few hours later, Ruby wakes to find Red asleep on the floor. As she drags him back to bed, she hears Irene and Terry arguing, so she steps out to check. Terry quickly closes the curtains when he sees her. The next day, Terry invites Ruby to accompany him to a premiere. She says she has homework, but Terry insists she'll have enough time, so she agrees. However, Terry doesn't actually go to the premiere. Instead, they go to a restaurant. Terry shares that marrying Irene has made him very lonely. Ruby simply says it's time for her to sleep, so Terry drives her home, but he drives recklessly. After nearly hitting another car, Terry pulls over and leans toward her in a frightening posture but claims he's just adjusting her seatbelt. Back home, Ruby goes to the living room to get a book and is startled to see Irene injecting himself. Worried by all she has witnessed, the next day after school Ruby goes to see the family lawyer, Alvin, to tell him everything. He says he'll do his best to help her. But strangely, after Ruby leaves, he suddenly calls someone. That night, Terry and Irene talk to Ruby privately. They explain that what she saw last night was Irene self-administering insulin for his diabetes. They also mention pretending to be scary around Terry and ask her to trust them. Ruby replies that she may have overreacted, The next day, after waiting for someone to pick her up, Ruby walks to Terry's office. The receptionist tells her to wait in the lobby, where she sees Terry being threatened by loan sharks. Terry is violently pushed against a glass wall. Frightened, Ruby decides to wait for him at a repair shop, where she is startled to find her parents' car. But she couldn't investigate much because just then Terry arrived to take her home. During dinner that night, Ruby saw Terry setting up the home alarm code, so she secretly wrote down the numbers. A few hours later, Ruby pretended to be doing homework, but she was actually reading an online article about her parents' accident. However, the article mentioned the wrong car. Ruby immediately emailed Alvin to ask about it. She was too upset to finish her homework and eventually fell asleep at the computer. A while later, Terry saw Ruby and smiled when he noticed her unfinished essay on the screen. The next morning, Ruby woke up to find that someone had completed the essay for her. She thanked Terry for his help. Although he denied doing it, he gave her a very strange wink. Ruby didn't suspect much and went to school. That night, she tried to contact Alvin via email but suddenly discovered her account had been locked. At that moment, the phone rang, and Terry answered. It was the loan sharks demanding money. Ruby also grabbed another phone to listen in on the conversation. She nearly got caught by Terry but managed to hide in time. She overheard Terry mentioning that he had found a new target. After Terry went to sleep, Ruby used a special code on her phone to trace the call and saved the number. The next day at school, feeling uneasy, Ruby left class and called Alvin from a public phone. He revealed an important discovery. The car her parents were driving on the night of the accident belonged to Terry's company. This made her suspect the accident was a trap set up by Terry. She couldn't tell him this because her teacher suddenly appeared to take her to the vice principal. They discovered that Ruby's essay had plagiarized from a book. The vice principal reported it to Irene, and Ruby could potentially be expelled. That night at home, Irene tried to talk to Ruby about the incident, but she blamed Terry. He told her to take responsibility for her own life. Ruby couldn't sleep that night and decided to leave her bed with a plan in mind. She stole Terry's car keys and woke her brother to go with her. After disabling the alarm using the code she had secretly seen the day before, they drove away from the house. The noise woke Terry. However, they couldn't get far because the highway was closed due to a landslide. Police stopped them, questioned Ruby's age, and asked for her driver's license, which of course she didn't have. Terry and Irene appeared in time to bring the siblings back home. On the way, Ruby accused Terry of killing her parents for money. He denied it, though he clearly looked worried. Back home, Ruby tried to run as soon as they arrived, but Terry pulled her inside. They struggled until Terry let her drop to the floor, saying he didn't need her because he already had her brother Red, and one child was enough to claim the inheritance left by her parents. At that moment, Irene appeared and injected Ruby with a sedative to put her to sleep. The next day, Terry received another call from the loan sharks, but this time they refused to give him more time. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Irene, a doctor, had been falsifying prescriptions to steal drugs for herself. However, her conversation with the pharmacy was interrupted when she was called to meet the medical director. It turned out Ruby had been sedated for some time, and Irene lost her medical license for stealing pharmaceuticals. Terry and Irene began arguing violently. Things had gone too far, and they needed to resolve the situation quickly. Terry said they needed to get rid of Ruby, but since Irene no longer had sedatives, he left the house to see if he could buy more. Meanwhile, Irene went to the living room to grab some items but suddenly saw a videotape and decided to watch it. It contained memories of her playing with Ruby as a child on the beach. Overcome with guilt, Irene overdosed before going upstairs, and Ruby discovered her body next to her bed the next morning. A few hours later, Terry returned home and was devastated to see his wife's body. He also heard Ruby on the phone giving someone their address. He immediately chased her, but she hid while taking her brother to escape. Terry continued searching the house. Red tried to run through the front door but was caught by Terry, who dragged him back inside. Ruby struck Terry and ran away with her brother. Terry caught up and captured them, locking them in the basement. The siblings discovered a window below and began destroying the mesh with a chair they found. Through the window, they saw Terry drive out and park, then return inside to nap. Taking advantage of this, Red escaped through the window and stole Terry's keys, but it turned out he was just pretending to sleep. The kids left the basement and saw Terry on the couch. Ruby was shocked at how easily it had happened. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Ruby hid behind a wall and watched Terry open the door for Alvin. He announced that the bank had frozen Terry's trust account and launched an investigation. It turned out Alvin had informed Terry about all of Ruby's actions. Suddenly, a red car parked outside, and two men entered. They were the loan sharks. They claimed Terry's wife had called them, but it was actually Ruby. They demanded money, but Terry said he had none. The lawyer tried to avoid them but was attacked, and they captured Terry. Before leaving, Ruby secretly sabotaged Terry's car. On the road, Terry's car went out of control, crashing into the red car, which then hit a truck. After narrowly avoiding a few more vehicles, Terry's car plunged into a ravine. The movie ends with the two siblings visiting their parents' grave. They unexpectedly reunite with their long-lost uncle, who promises to give them the best life possible. What do you think about this movie? Don't forget to like and subscribe to support Bok Tuyot for new films every day. Thank you for watching.